Welcome to the Vinimark Podcast, a collection of interviews with thought leaders of the wine world. Brought to you by Vinimark.
Right now, you're getting in on the ground floor of the largest drinking population that the world has ever seen.
Someone has spent 10 years getting that vine ready just to go into bottle it. And now you've got 60 seconds to try and condense everything that person did.
It is almost like being a dating app because the personalities have to click, the ethos have to click. I've even met Uber drivers who are interested in becoming somms because they saw Blind Ambition.
Chenin Blanc is like the wife that you hated, but you always keep there. You're like, yeah, today you're amazing. You've got your big Madalas that have got big money, that will buy your traditional brands. Then you've got your middle-aged guys that want to explore wine. It's a journey that you'll need to take them through so that they understand that this wine will give you so much more than just that.
Hello and welcome to another Vinimark Podcast. And today's episode is a little bit different because instead of chatting to one genius, we've somehow managed to herd four of them into one show. Vinimark recently sponsored the South African Sommelier Association tour to the Western Cape, where somms from all over the country came down to explore some of the trend-setting winemakers and brands that make South African wine such a thrilling space to be right now. So we thought it was the perfect opportunity to connect with the team and learn a few lessons from wine professionals in other corners of the country. We're kicking off today's episode with a short interview with Erica Taylor, the Vice Chair for the South African Sommelier Association. We find out how she fills her time at SASA and also learn her rather unique journey into the wine industry, which in itself is a reminder that anyone, anywhere can find a welcome spot in this beautiful industry of ours. Erica, you're the Vice Chairman of SASA for the South African Sommelier Association. What is the mix of your job between administrating and taking care of the members of the organization? How do you balance those two?
We spend a lot of time with restaurateurs coming to us, asking us for somms. We spend a lot of times with somms coming to us. And it really is almost like being a dating app or something of that nature because the personalities have to click, the ethos have to click. You have to really know all of these people firsthand to place them in the right position, to guide them whether they need more certifications, whether they need more education. There's a lot of people that say that they want to work in wine and they think that the winemaker is the only job. We deal a lot with people that maybe they want to be a somm on the floor. Maybe they want to just make wine lists. Maybe they want to work at a wine farm. We really try to help people figure out where is their place in the wine industry and where their skills will be best served. We also work a lot with other somm organizations all over the world. So right now, for example, we're planning a project with the Brazilian Somm Association. I'm working with the Ecuador Somm Association. We've placed people in Sri Lanka and Kenya and the UK. We've placed people in restaurants here as well, mostly here, obviously, but we kind of try to take into account what everybody says and what they're really looking to do to help them get the most out of their experience.
So if a young waitron comes to you and says, I know nothing about wine, but I want to work as a somm, how do you engage with that individual?
Yeah, we get a lot of people that come to us say that they want to be somms. I think even we're a little bit far removed now, but the Somm movies and Blind Ambition had a huge impact on a lot of people that I meet. I've even met Uber drivers who are interested in becoming somms because they saw Blind Ambition and they saw people rising up from not knowing anything about wine. I think the biggest part of helping people is to first get them certified to see if they even like. A lot of people like drinking wine, but do you actually want to tell other people about it? Are you excited about what's in your glass right now? Are you excited to tell people that you went to this farm where the winemaker used to be a pilot and then got into winemaking and they have peacocks and they have birds and dogs and are you excited to tell that to people? Some people aren't, but there are some people that were born to be in hospitality. There are some people that don't know the word no. They want to make you happy. I think we're all people pleasers at heart. But they want to make people happy. They want to share the gospel of wine with other people. And you do feel like you found this like special magical thing and you want to be a part of it. And I think that's why we call it getting the bug. When people get the wine bug, something turned you on to wine, whether it was that bottle or that server or that somm or that dish that was paired with that food, something clicked for you that made you realize that you wanted to tell other people about this wonderful thing that you've discovered. And you can really spot that when you first meet with somebody and hear them start talking with wine. Talking with the sommeliers that are on this trip, they all have those kinds of stories. They all have the thing that makes them tick, that really is the reason why they get up and work those 14, 15-hour days. And we don't get into it for the money. So we got to get into it for the passion.
Well, I mean, you've very clearly been bitten by the wine bug. So where were you when you got infected?
I was infected with the wine bug when I was living in India. Not the typical path to wine, but the wine there was different from anything that I had tasted. I had been drinking a lot of Napa cabs growing up, you know, it's what your parents drank, and that was kind of all there was. And going back to the Somm movies, those actually came out when I was living in India, and that was the first time that I realized you could work in wine and not be a winemaker. I don't really like to get my hands dirty too often, so that wasn't going to be my path. And I did WSET level 1, and then I, by happenstance, was at a vineyard outside of Mumbai, and the owner was there and asked me if I wanted to come work there. And that was Tuesday. I moved there on Thursday, started on Friday. And from there, our winemaker loved South African wine. So I came here on holiday, fell in love with it, moved here 2 months later. It's been 8 years. And I really have to credit India with giving me that start and that interest. And now it's kind of come full circle. I'm actually exporting South African wine to India.
So what do you think are some things that people should know about the Indian wine industry that we would never have guessed?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that India became the largest population a few years back, and they also have the youngest population with the average age under 35. They are massively growing their wine sector. They have a Sommeliers Association as of 2 years ago. They have a Master of Wine, Sonal Holland, as of 2016, and they have a Master Sommelier as of last year. And the wine scene has absolutely exploded there. Bars, restaurants, they're doing a lot of imports of European wine. But we talk about the tariffs in America, and Indian taxes are 150% just to get into the country. And then it's another 150% or more to get into a different state. They're starting to reduce some of those taxes, so it's going to slowly become an easier market to get into. But right now, you're really kind of getting in on the ground floor of the largest drinking population that the world has ever seen. And it's so fun to be a part of that and to bring my love of South African wine. India was the first place that I ever drank a South African wine. I think it was probably Tall Horse. That was where I was first exposed to South African wine, and that's what brought me here ultimately. So I have nothing but love for the Indian market and can't wait to see how it grows.
So you are exporting South African wines into India. What is that thing that South African wine provides that no other region can provide?
I feel like it's been said a million times before, but value for money. I mean, our wines are, even with 150% markup, totally stand up next to European wines, Australian wine. The fruit forwardness, the ease of approachability of the wines, they're not, especially the ones that we're seeing that are being imported and exported. There is just that it's approachable. It's very easy to love South African wine. It's not complicated. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to be a long time wine drinker to appreciate it. It's just good juice in a glass and gets you a little tipsy. Doesn't hurt. So I think that the South African market for India is just like prime real estate.
As the vice chair, you've invested a huge amount in SASA, and the fruit of your labor is very clear, by the way. So thank you for that. What do you think is an important goal or initiative that excites you most about what SASA is doing and where it's heading in South Africa?
That is such a good question, because Lori Cooper and I have spoken a lot about this, and we want to broaden SASA's horizons to Pretoria, to Joburg, to Durban. There are great somms in all of those places that we have not been able to reach. This trip with Vinimark has really helped to start, just in a tiny way, to bridge the gap of what's happening there versus what's happening here. And as we all know, Johannesburg and Pretoria and Cape Town, the three of them separately are their own animals when it comes to what they sell. I was speaking with one of the somms from Pretoria, and he said they sell Sauvignon Blanc and Merlot, and I run a wine bar in Cape Town. I don't think I've ever been asked for a Merlot in my life, and I sell Sauvignon Blanc, but it's not my bread and butter. It still comes back to Shannon. It still comes back to people trying new things. Whereas the somms that I've spoken with, a lot of people stick with what they know, stick with what's available everywhere. We know a lot of the brands that you see over and over and over and over again, and they've done a really good job. But I think that for me, being able to bring more of the Gauteng Soms into the fold, there might be some of the Eastern Cape, there might be some in the Northern Cape. I don't personally know them just yet, but Gauteng, Pretoria, Durban, I know Pretoria's in Gauteng. Bringing those Soms in to give us a more rounded view of what's happening in the wine world in South Africa. We're the South African Sommeliers Association. We are not the Cape Town Somm Association. We're not the Stellenbosch Somm Association. And in the past, I think it's definitely felt like we've been a little bit removed from them, and we really want to hear their voices and hear what they have to say and lend some support their way so that they're not having to come up with trying to find their own tasting groups or do their own master classes. We want to take those things there as well.
It was at this point in the conversation with Erica that it felt right to switch gears and actually talk to one of the Soms that she'd been referring to. Someone who is right there in the thick of it, serving and selling wine in South Africa's largest metropolis. So next up, we spoke to Gray Tawanda, who's built a reputation for bringing warmth and authenticity to Joburg's fine dining scene. We chatted about what makes Johannesburg drinkers different, how relationships trump salesmanship, and why Shen and Semillon blends might just be the most exciting expression of South African identity in a glass. Great. You're based up in Joburg. You are at the Potluck Club, which is a super fine dining restaurant. What does that clientele look like? Is it international? Is it local?
In Joburg, it's quite tricky because you're a new kid on the block, you're a hippie, everybody likes you for the first 3 months. And then after those 3 months is what actually defines you. So we then found out people that really wanted very toned down dining style without any fuss, but really good food. Those people that actually became repeating guests.
What is the wine culture like in Joburg compared to Cape Town?
You've got really good wine buyers, people that want to build their cellars, people that would only release, they'll buy 5 cases, 6 cases or something, and then they put it aside, right? However, there's also a really big eager for growth in terms of the young guys that are coming in, right? People that want to taste new wine, people that want to explore wine, people that see the trends happening in Cape Town, in Bordeaux, but they just want to be associated with wine. Not because they just want to, but because they appreciate the product. So you've got quite different clientele. You've got your big madalas that have got big money, that will buy your traditional brands every time. Then you've got your middle-aged guys, corporates, and everybody that wants to explore wine, that know that Cape Town is hippie and it's nice and trendy. So we want to know what fine wine is like, and they've just started learning it. You've got your guys that will go buy your babsak.
How do you deal with that first type? If a client like that, the big medallion comes in, just wants to buy the big brands, what is your opening line as a sommelier? How do you make them feel welcome?
It's relationships. Joburg is such a city where it relies on relationships. It's a question that I actually posed to the other guys today. The first line for me, when I get to a table, "Hi, how are you? My name is Gray. What can I do for you today? What do you enjoy drinking? What do you buy?" But I can't come in and say, "What can I sell you?" Because in Joburg, primary, establish a relationship first before I can sell you anything. If you don't do that, you have missed them.
I feel like when you talk about the big spenders, sometimes there is the sense that actually they don't want to connect, they just want to be served. And there are other people, often people who aren't quite as wealthy, who actually value your connection and your input. Am I wrong about that? Or do you find there are some clientele who aren't interested in you, but they want your knowledge?
So I think how to get to that, it's a bit different because now you've got 2 different groups. And what do you do? What do you say? How do you get to it? But because Joburg is such a massive city and it's got lots of money and people are willing to spend, you then need to figure out how do you get them to spend. Be cool, create relationships, talk to people genuinely, authentically, and provide a bit of education as we go along. Start less technical and get more technical as people want to. Get the feel and then just go with the trend, go with the flow, yeah.
So would it be fair to say some diners or clients make you feel more comfortable and some less?
That's 100%. Like you've got a business guy that will come in, that wants to have his bottle that he knows. Do you understand? And he has drank one brand and that's what he wants. And that's what he wants to see on the list. Give him that. And then you get one guy that comes in and he wants to have a conversation with you that is curious about wine. And then you have a conversation with him and say, this is what I give. Of which I feel Joburg winers, he has to have a balance between those. Like when I go to Joburg and I was looking at wine lists, whatever, you would either get extremely heavy wine lists that are dominated by big brands. And then you go to wine bars that have got like nice, geeky, cool stuff. But I think being in a restaurant, you need to have both. You know what I mean? Like, you need to have a wine that a person will come and look at and say, this is the brand that I know, I'm going to buy it. But you also have to have wines that you're going to talk about and you're going to introduce and say, guys, please try this.
So when someone makes you feel comfortable and you're willing to share the wines that excite you the most, what is the first place you go to?
I'm really excited about Nkulu. I haven't been there, but I'm really excited about Nkulu. And I'm really excited about this all up-and-coming wine, guys. Rutger van Wyk, Karatara, when he started there, now he's making new Don wines. And I think he has evolved with the brand and even with new Don wines. Absolutely amazing.
And which cultivars are exciting you?
Chenin Blanc is exciting, obviously. Chenin Blanc is like the wife that you've always had, that you hated, but you always keep there. You're like, yeah, today you're amazing, but tomorrow, like, I'm excited about Chenin Blanc because it's a grape of South Africa. But Grenache that has been coming out, Sinso that's been coming out has been really delicious. And Natasha Williams, she's just come up with a brand now called Lalela. And it's a Chenin Blanc Semillon blend. And for me, that Chenin Blanc Semillon blend actually really excites me.
Why Chenin and Semillon? Why do they excite you?
Like, obviously, it started with Chris Allight when he did Catology. And we're all testing Catology and we're like really excited. But I just think you've got Chenin Blanc, which really does well in South Africa, as we know it. And it's one of the biggest white wines there. And you've got Semillon that grows fantastically well in Franschhoek and some parts across South Africa. And I think when they blend, for me, it's almost like identity because you don't find a Chenin Semillon blend in most parts of the world. But in South Africa, you do find fantastic wines. It's exciting. It's bold, it's rich, it's beautiful, but it's got like beautiful freshness.
That's a fantastic point. Chenin and Semillon is not blended anywhere else in the world like we've lived. That's a great point. So last question, what is hot and on the rise that this summer, 2025, 2026, that wine lovers should be looking out for, that is already on the way and it's exciting and it's high quality, but that is about to hit the market? What should we be looking out for?
Yeah, I'm going to research to the point that I made now. The wines, the Chenin Blanc Semillon, I tested it last week at the trade show. That's amazing. It's energetic, it's punchy, it's beautiful, it's fresh, and it's something that people need to take care of. New Don wines, Chenin Blanc, I think it's amazing. And I'm more of a red guy, but I'm talking about wine. Yeah, that's crazy. I love red wines, but I'm speaking about white wines.
While you might not have picked it up in this recording, it was at this point that I had to release Gray to go and think more about white wines as he was practically salivating right there in front of me. But one of the most charming elements about my discussion with him was the fact that he very clearly had maintained an enormous amount of excitement for what he did, despite the fact that he has to sell wine, talk wine, push wine for 12 to 15 hours a day during his work week. He certainly had that extra X factor that Eric had spoken about earlier. And so it made me ask, well, what is the logical conclusion or end point that you reach when you install all the basic skills of an outstanding sommelier and include the X factor? What does the absolute exemplary sommelier look like? To find out, I was lucky enough to be able to spend a few minutes with South Africa's 2025 sommelier champion, Armand Redhart. Armand is a psychology graduate, and he believes that the key skill for any sommelier isn't just palate and polish. It's actually teleportation. We spoke about how to transport guests across time and terroir in 60 seconds, how a psychology degree can sharpen your service, and why the warmth of Bloemfontein's wine scene might just be what Cape Town's fine dining culture is missing. Armand, you are the 2025 sommelier champion, so best sommelier in South Africa, but you still have that excitement, and I think that's hugely important. I think a lot of people in the wine industry lose that. It almost becomes uncool to gush about how cool a wine is. What was one wine that gave you that feeling this week?
The amphora from Krone. It's something I'm very familiar with, but we just sat with it again, and we were sitting. If you're having a wine on the estate, it just brings a completely different atmosphere to engaging with the wine, where you're actually sitting with the vines and the terroir surrounding you. And that amphora was it was new dimensions of it that I never saw before, with this like very saline oyster shells. And to be fair, 3 glasses of it was a bit much, but 2 glasses was bloody brilliant.
You said just now about the Krone wine, that you're right there, you're sitting there, you're tasting it, you're in the scene. How do you communicate that to someone sitting in a restaurant or at an event? What does the som need to be able to transfer that joy into a restaurant scene?
That's a brilliant question, and it's the very center of my philosophy as a sommelier. is your ability to transport someone. You don't have 5 minutes to talk to someone. It's great to be at a tasting and lead a masterclass, and everybody's forced to listen to you because you're standing in the front. But when you're standing next to a table, you've got 60 seconds to really convey a message about this wine to someone. Someone has spent 10 years getting that vine ready just to go into bottle, and then it's sat another few years, and in between they haven't sold any bottles, and so they've made no money for 15 years. And now you've got 60 seconds to try and condense everything that person did to make a beautiful product, and for someone to go, yeah, I think we'll have the bottle. It's just it's the scale differences between a sommelier and a winemaker is just the most ridiculous thing. But coming back to the core philosophy is you want to transport someone back to the space around you. What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you feeling? What was something interesting that happened while all this was going on? And what is something slightly technical that the winemaker did? Because you don't want to give too many technical things to guests, but if you just give them a little bit to hook onto, something that's accessible, you can really gauge where their knowledge is at, and then you can meet them at their level. But beyond the technical speak, I believe just being poetic and communicating well and giving a sense of space.
So the first thing you have to have mastered as a sommelier is teleportation. As the South African SASA Sommelier Champion for 2025, what are the other skills and what made you the best?
I spent so much time watching the ASI, like world's best sommelier competitions, and like from all the way back to as far as I could go, and just completely being engulfed in what the world's best is doing. Because that same structure is still applied to the SASA competition. They follow the ASA guidelines. So you're still working on those little elements. And those can be broken down into 3 pillars, essentially, of your theoretical knowledge, your, knowledge in general. So you got to have current events as well. So theoretical knowledge and current events, your tasting ability, blind tasting is super important, and then your service component. And then they weave all of those together by, let's say, one of the first tasting things we did in the final was 2 completely blacked out glasses where you can't see what's happening in the glass. And it's like a mock service trial where a rep is coming into your restaurant, as they often do, 5 minutes before opening. And they say, you've got to taste this. What do you think? So now your challenge is to blind taste, identify what's in the glass, and also tell the audience and the judges what you would do with that in your restaurant. And you've got 5 minutes or 3 minutes or however long, but they try and keep it tight. But you have to be skilled and completely varied, and not just wine. You should be tasting baijiu, cognacs, brandies, vodkas. We were asked about coffee trade and coffee recipes, and we made Negronis. And so wine is obviously central, but there's so many other elements around it that you absolutely have to be on top of your game as far as knowledge is concerned, service is concerned. But for me personally, the blind tasting is the most fun. It's the coolest thing in the world. We were just talking about teleportation. You've got to look at it, smell it, and then taste it. I try and keep my eyes closed so that I'm actually teleported somewhere. And then you've got to make a judgment on what it is. And you've got to know what's happening in the industry. You've got to have tasted so many times before. It's really a muscle. And then, of course, the theoretical knowledge ties it all in. I've said a lot now, but that's essentially your poise during service when they throw you curveballs, which they love doing, how you handle guests, your knowledge on what's current in the industry. And then, like I said, blind tasting that's the most fun.
So that's like the most polished, honed version of your craft. But you actually started your hospitality journey in Bloemfontein, which is both conceptually and physically thousands of kilometers from Cape Town. Are there things about the Bloemfontein hospitality scene in your memory of that place and time that you actually think, I wish there was more of that in this cosmopolitan Cape Town set?
110%. So I'm born and raised in Kimberley, and I worked at a pub for a few months when I was in high school. The pub culture in Kimberley, I think, was the starting point for hospitality for me, just because there's not a lot to do in Kimberley, but the pub culture is just so vibrant. There's a lot happening. So I think hospitality drew me before wine drew me. And then obviously going to Bloemfontein and working at a steakhouse while I was studying at university, and they had a wine list of about 150 wines, and that just completely stole me. The owners, Nick and George, they really have an absolute passion for wine. And the fact that you found that somewhere in Bloemfontein was just the most incredible thing. How are these people romanticizing this thing in the glass that I don't even like drinking? what is it behind this that is like completely engulfing these people? Like, what's happening? So that brought my attention towards wine first. But as far as your question goes of what we could have in Cape Town, there's more warmth and genuine curiosity. I can promise you that nobody is as fun to do a tasting with than someone from Kimberley or Bloemfontein who doesn't necessarily drink a lot of wine, because their curiosity is as genuine as it gets, and there's an absolute warmth to their hospitality. And that's something that I really hope I'm able to share in the industry in Cape Town, because I know I'm not the only person from Kimberley or Bloem in Cape Town, and everyone else that I've met from there as well. It's the most authentic, beautiful warmth that you find in guests. And it's one thing nerding out to a table, but when a table starts showing you photos of the fish they caught or the buck they shot, and it's like, you don't just have 60 seconds at a table, although your chef would like you to keep it 60 seconds. You're just dragged in there. It's very personable. And obviously because it's much smaller, the chances of you guys having mutual acquaintances and knowing each other is a lot higher. So that's one element I would love to see more of in Cape Town.
What I pick up from you is warmth, it is sincerity, it is an excitement and a passion. Then when you were talking about the competition, you stated 2 or 3 times how important the technical information was. Yeah. What would you say is the balance between the need for technical information and their need to have a sincere passion? How would you weight those two against each other in the ideal sommelier?
You can entice people to be nudged towards passion and warmth, but you can't teach that. But you also can't put yourself in a position where you're able to portray those things unless you are competent. And you don't become competent by giving a good handshake or giving a good hug. It's a good start, but your technical knowledge should be, especially when you're younger, should be at the core of your focus. You need to be encyclopedic. In South Africa, we can get away with not knowing so much about wineries across the seas because we are so patriotic and we drink what we drink and we drink our own wine, and great. But then we should be absolute experts on South Africa. The technical knowledge is of the utmost importance. We speak a lot about professionalism in the hospitality industry. Becoming a sommelier is an opportunity to really be a well-respected professional, and it's up to you to how far you're going to carry that. So yes, technical knowledge it should be your core focus. Warmth and all those things, it's obviously that's brilliant, but that's not something you spend time developing. Yeah, I also believe that's something most of us as South Africans have. We should just let our guard down a bit, be comfortable, because when you start marrying the technical knowledge and the warmth and you get to these more high-end spaces where wine takes you, people get to feel rather disconnected to the people they're serving, because generally they're of a different caste for the most part. But you must maintain your absolute central authenticity. You've got to be who you are, but you also need to have an immense amount of knowledge and technical expertise, because without that, you shouldn't be there.
One more question I wanted to ask you tonight is, hospitality is universal to what sommeliers need to do. Technical knowledge, as you just said, is universal. But you have a psychology background. What do you take away from your tertiary education in psychology that you think sommeliers around the world should take into their day job or night job?
So I majored in psychology and linguistics, specifically because of my keen interest in language and the words we use in a clinical sense. A lot of therapy is literally a talk therapy toolkit. That is what psychology is, for the most part, in the therapeutic context. There's a keen interest in the words we use and how we use them. And I think that ties back to where we started the conversation. How do you teleport people? You've got to be able to utilize your speech. It would be an easy answer to say to be more empathetic and compassionate to people, but I think that should come naturally if you're in hospitality already. From my studies to sommelier work is the ability to speak, the ability to form your words and condense your thoughts and break down complex topics in a way that's accessible to the person across from you. A classical education goes a long way. Philosophy, psychology, politics, linguistics. I think it keeps your mind vibrant. I get super giddy about those things as well because they are so bloody brilliant. I always wonder what would Sigmund Freud's favorite wine, or what would Carl Jung drink, or what their thoughts would be on the meditative and cerebral qualities of blind tasting. So I do daydream about that sometimes, but I'll get to that when I'm able to retire.
Our final guest, Mxolisi Mahanchi, is not quite ready to retire just yet, but he had been very patient, waiting for me to chat with the rest of his team. Mxolisi is a Zimbabwean sommelier whose mind is as sharp as his palate, and we kicked off his conversation by getting the lowdown on what sort of arguments sommeliers have during their long bus rides.
I will give you one argument that happened actually yesterday. That's the story of now that most of the wine farms are going Syrah versus the Shiraz. And then others were on the side of, if you've been selling your wine as Shiraz for the last 10 years, why is it that you're moving now? If this happens, our people would say, this wine used to be like this, now you're doing it in this style, so we're not enjoying that. But others are saying, okay, let's move on with the times. But my point is, ideally, they move to Syrah so that they can take the price slightly higher. And then they have maybe a second level, which will be a Shiraz, most probably using a lighter or easier style as an introduction wine or as an entry-level wine. And there are a couple of other things. This last one was the dead yeast. The yeast, if you introduce obviously something that kills the yeast in the bottle for champagne or on the tank or anything like that, does yeast really die or it just becomes dormant? Because when you add dosage or something like that, it revives. So was that yeast really dead per se, or was that yeast just gone dormant for some time? So there were people that were going, it's dead. And then people will say, no, but think of it, it's actually there. And then there were people that were still saying, okay, but you're talking about two different yeasts, the ambient yeast, and then there's still the natural yeast that's there everywhere in the air.
As a wine nerd, I am stoked to hear that sommeliers also argue about geeky stuff. When it comes to being in the restaurant, how important do you think is the balance between technical wine geek knowledge and storytelling and relationship?
Look, you work with people at a personal level. If you understand whom you're talking to is a person that you have spoken to a couple of times, you've created a rapport. For me, I don't mind pulling a chair and go as geeky as can be. There are others that always, even if they taste something somewhere else, they still come back and say, oh, by the way, last week I was in Provence, last week I was in Italy, and this is what I tasted. What's your take on that? So for me, with those people, I can go geeky. That's actually my forte. But then you still have new people that you don't really know where they are in terms of their wine knowledge, and we don't want to give them those big words that's going to them that derail them or chase them away, so that next time a person thinks of asking you questions like, ish, they're going to say, I'm not going to understand. You adapt to different situations so that each gets to understand. And in a selling setup at the restaurants, ideally, it's just giving this small information. And then maybe when you come to top up again, just give another information. And the response that you'll get will determine how much more information I'm giving to that particular table. If I understand that it's a business table, they don't need me, then I distance myself. But if I see that it's a family-oriented type table that they're enjoying that particular wine and they need more information, then I actually gravitate towards that so that I give as much of information, not necessarily about just that particular wine, but everything else that we'll discuss so that they also have broader knowledge about what they're drinking or what they need drink the next time they come.
So there are some wines, especially those geeky wines, that are love-hate affairs. They can divide people. What is the opposite of that? What is the safest wine you can think of to a table, perhaps who are early in their wine journey? What's your go-to?
I would say a Chenin Blanc. It has gone through its ups and downs, as you would come to know and understand. But throughout the years, there's one grape that has stayed in South Africa and remained true. Statistics say we make the most Chenin Blanc, even more than lower value. And that becomes some of the things that makes us unique. Its versatility makes it easier for you to recommend sparkling wine. And maybe you can give them a brandy tour as they tell you, did you actually know that the same grapes are the actual ones that you use to make this brand? So you'd have taken them through the entire journey by simplicity in making them aware of one grape variety. So for me, Chenin Blanc is that versatility.
So I asked Gray earlier what wines are exciting him the most. And I want to ask you the opposite. What are the wines that you are just finding impossible to sell that perhaps were once fairly common and just now people seem not to be keen? When you suggest it to them, 9 times out of 10, they'll go, oh, no thanks. Is there anything like that?
You can just pick up one variety that when you look in the 70s, 80s, those are the wines that were there. The variety is Cinsault. Studies show that even the Cabernet Sauvignons that were there at the time actually included Cinsault, and it was the variety that was there for the longest. Tree is slightly bigger than that of Cabernet Sauvignon. So there's a bit of blending that worked with. But then when we entered independence, it just died down. But it still remained with some of the vines that were there, not being used per se. It's starting to come back right now. And the majority of the sensors that you'll find out there, you'll see that they are the old vine style, 35 years and older. But when you look at the cells right now of sensors, they actually haven't come alive and lived up to that expectation. If I'm to name one variety, for me, it would be a sensor.
So there's a sense that the critics are excited by it, but diners and patrons aren't ready for it. What do you think it is?
We're in different wavelengths, if I can put it in that way. For me to recommend a wine, I'm excited for any person to come to actually enjoy that particular wine. But for a person who's seated down, they usually gravitate towards the wines that they usually know. If I'm selling a sensor to any person, I can recommend it maybe slightly chilled. I can recommend it during the day or later in the evening. There are some that are quite heavy and still you would get a different texture and component in there. But now it's a journey that you'll need to take them through so that they understand that this wine will give you so much more than just that. It's moving people from, I'm drinking this wine because I came with my boss and I saw him drinking. I'm drinking this wine because there is this particular person who is showing this on their social media space or something like that. So I also want to understand that. For us as a Somms, it's just jumping out and saying, what is it that you want? We ask the leading questions to the fruits and the flavor profile that you're looking for. And I'm giving you a wine based on everything that I have asked you towards what you want to drink. And it becomes a result of this led me to what I'm going to enjoy. So we have that liberty to go through that whole experience, if you will, for them to get to understand that.
So talking of the whole experience, you have got to do something that many sommeliers don't get to do, which is blend your own range of wines. What were some of the biggest surprises or learning points that you didn't expect from the process?
First of all, I must say thank you to my boss, Mr. Desmond Mabuza, who is the owner of Signature Restaurant, giving me such an opportunity. But I had to understand what the clientele or the majority of people that come to Signature usually would drink. We post a very extensive wine list. It's a 50-page wine list, over 350 wines in there. And the question is, what is it that you're going to add that everyone is going to go, okay, this is me. Oh, I can find something that I can resonate with. Just like Signature, no one's signature is the same to the next person. If you like a Chenin Blanc and I love Chenin Blanc as well, the chances are you like a different Chenin Blanc from what I want. Maybe you like an oaked Chenin Blanc. The next person like the Amphora style, but we all like a Chenin Blanc. So it was just trying to get the blends that will get at least each and every person's profile to a certain extent be represented. And so that blend is blended with the Masane, just to give it a bit of a balance to it, a V&A, which will give that perfumey character. And because the majority of people that come through the doors still love their fruity-driven wines, the bit of perfumey flavor to it. And then we added a twist to it, which was adding a Hasle, a grape which is from Hungary, usually made to make the beautiful, most sweetest wine the best there is. Sauteurs or some of the other grapes or the other names that we have come to know. And the best dessert wines actually right now are from Hungary and they are made from the Hasle. But we made that grape as a drier style. And so all the components we tasted together and different vintages we tasted. In 2020 was the vintage that you believed worked very well. It's over a year right now, but it's already showing a bit of tertiary notes over the primary, and the acidity is still there. And the secondary flavor is so beautiful.
So last question.
Yeah.
We've all watched Blind Ambition, which is a film about Zimbabwean sommeliers, all very gifted, who also happen to be really good at tasting wines blind. And in Cape Town, there's this correlation I've noticed between eloquence, the ability to express oneself, and being Zimbabwean, if I may make such a generalization. Do you think there's something about the Zimbabwean culture that enables you to perform well in this job?
Look, there's a thread of the majority of sommeliers starting from the waitering positions, but I think it's something that's in us to have, let me call it an X factor for now, that makes it easy for as Zimbabweans to be teachable, to actually uplift ourselves to the next level. If you have 20 people that are around, and chances are if there's Zimbabweans there, they would outshine the rest. Please don't kill me about that. But the idea towards that for me is, from the background where we have been made to grow, is we have always been a challenge to be better in whatsoever that you put our mind to do. And that's just generally what you will find. You say that this was happening in Cape Town. I'm in Joburg. That's what I'm seeing as well. It's a common thing. And now we have Signature Restaurant in Umhlanga. And the people that are coming up and they're doing the same things are the Zimbabweans. So for me, it's the extension of the lifestyle that they have come to live from where we're coming from, the willingness to go an extra mile.
So at the heart, it's to be willing to learn and to be willing to improve.
Certainly, it shows me that you are in a position of wanting to learn more. Then I will give you that responsibility, and then I'll empower you to be a better person. But this opportunity, like I said, is open to as many as possible. We are willing to teach as many as possible where we are in as many of the industries where we can, to say this can be done. So yeah, each and every person can do it.
And so it is that as the 2025 SASA Sommelier Tour to the Western Cape drew to an end, so does today's episode. But not without the rather heartwarming reminder that, as our guests showed us this evening, far from being about exclusionary practices and snooty highfalutin fine dining, the most common element amongst all of our guests was the desire to share their seemingly inexhaustible excitement over the incredible depth and breadth of South African wine.
We've reached the end of another episode of the Vinimark Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing to the Vinimark channel so that you can join us for more conversations around wine commerce, wine science, cellar mastery, marketing, and the rising trends amidst the industry's more adventurous pioneers.